writing Trump is trying to manufacture a crisis in LA County, deploying troops not for order but to create chaos.
He is going to use this to declare martial law and then declare himself a king of sorts this weekend. Rocket launchers, missiles to be featured in Trump's Army parade. The official said that ever since Trump won in November, the plan was for a military parade to mark the Army's anniversary. Trump doesn't deserve a parade. If you would like to see someone who is deserving of a parade, boy, do I have the video for you. Pepper balls and flashbangs. Walks the fuck away. Flips them off.
In the meantime, Governor Newsom is observing the situation. He's posted several tweets this afternoon and this evening, writing Trump is trying to manufacture a crisis in LA County, deploying troops not for order but to create chaos.
Trying to manufacture a crisis
or harm law enforcement.
That is exactly what he's doing. And my worry, and this is my worry, this could be a week for the history books, unfortunately, is that he is going to use this to declare martial law and then declare himself a king of sorts this weekend. Rocket launchers, missiles to be featured in Trump's Army parade. Army officials are preparing to display rocket launchers and missiles along with more than 100 military aircraft and vehicles next weekend at the D.C. parade, celebrating the Army's 250th anniversary. This is Trump's birthday. His 79th birthday. He wants to flex military might on the streets of America. Such a display of military equipment is rare in the United States, and critics of the event have expressed concerns about the imagery as well as the damage that heavy military vehicles could pose to the city's streets. This could be the week, I hope I'm wrong, that all facade of American democracy is completely washed away. And King Donald ascends to the throne. This was something he wanted to pull off in 2020. How did he finally achieve the military parade that he always wanted? The year-long effort will culminate next weekend with a few lingering uncertainties, including how many spectators will show up. On June 12th, 2024, a day when Joe Biden was still president, running for re-election and had every expectation of serving a second term, the U.S. Army filed a permit in hopes of celebrating its 250th birthday on the National Mall the following year. The event would involve as many as 300 soldiers and civilian personnel. There would be a concert by the U.S. Army Band, which is really good, by the way. The U.S. Army Band, excellent. 4 cannons would be fired, some 120 chairs would be set up. All told, it would be a fairly modest affair, another event on a summer day on the national lawn. A few weeks before 4th of July festivities would bring a much grander display. Then President Donald Trump was elected and plans for the day changed dramatically. More than 24 tanks will now roll through the city, and 50 helicopters will fly overhead. Thousands of troops, many in period costume from past wars, will participate, and several musical acts will perform. All told, it amounts to the grandest event since Trump took office for his second term, a spectacle that federal government and military officials have maneuvered to fulfill an ambitious and grandiose vision for celebrating the country and its military. The large-scale military parade is the result of a confluence of interests A president who has long pushed for the kind of grand pageant he'd witnessed in other countries, and a military that was now willing to show off its might. For a president who loves crowds, who relishes big displays of heavy equipment, and whose inauguration was pushed indoors because of cold weather, everything has fallen in place for an event to take place on June 14th, Trump's 79th birthday. Pentagon is now under the control of loyalists. The guardrails previously in place are gone. There is also a more obvious reason to hold a parade now: the Army's 250th anniversary. The Army was pushing on an unlocked door, said a U.S. official familiar with the parade planning efforts, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss internal deliberations. The year-long effort and the growing ambition of the past few months will culminate next weekend with a few lingering uncertainties. How many people will show up? Whether Democratic No Kings protest planned across the country will dampen enthusiasm for the main event, and whether it will live up to the president's expectations. 8 years ago, during his first term, Trump went to France and stood with President Emmanuel Macron to watch that nation's July 14th Bastille Day celebration. French troops marched down the Avenue des Champs-Élysées along with military tanks, armored vehicles, and fighter jets, painting the sky with blue, white, and red smoke while flying over the Arc de Triomphe. He told aides afterwards that he wanted something similar at home. It was one of the greatest parades I've ever seen, Trump told reporters. I can just imagine it. It was so cool. It was 2 hours on the button, and it was military might, and I think a tremendous thing for France and for the spirit of France. And then he had a boast: we're going to have to try to top it. In 2018, his public and private musings about a military parade became more of a presidential directive. Pentagon officials began trying to figure out how they could pull it off. Even before taking office, he had wanted to find ways to showcase American military might. But the idea had long been viewed as cost prohibitive and not necessary for a global superpower. It also ran against an American tradition of avoiding public displays of martial strength more common in authoritarian regimes, such as the former Soviet Union's Red Square celebrations or North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's penchant for showing off his country's missiles. Still, President Harry S. Truman's 1949 inauguration parade featured military equipment, as did President John F. Kennedy's in 1961. President H.W. Bush oversaw a parade in 1991 celebrating victory in the First Persian Gulf War, with General H. Norman Schwarzkopf leading 8,800 veterans of Operation Desert Storm down Constitution Avenue. But Trump, in his first term, never got his parade. Officials at the Pentagon wanted to keep away from politics. Jim Mattis, Trump's first defense secretary, said it would harken back to Soviet Union-like displays of authoritarian power, but said he would look into it, according to Holding the Line. Always a book plug. In private, Snodgrass recalled in his book, Mattis was more blunt in his opposition. I'd rather swallow acid. Mattis, who has previously voiced disappointment in Snodgrass for violating his trust, declined to comment. After Mattis resigned in December of 2018, Trump held a grandiose salute to America in Washington with military flyovers, but still no parade. The Army usually celebrates its birthday with a festival at the National Museum of the United States Army. The event typically features equipment displays, an aerial parachute demonstration, and a performance by the Army Band. With the 250th anniversary coming in 2025, however, Army officials knew they wanted something with a little more pizzazz. The thinking was, let's take the festival to the National Mall so that it's easier for the public to participate, said Paul Hadwiger, live events project manager in the U.S. Army. General Randy George, the Army's top officer, and his team began discussing how they might structure the event. The initial permit filed last year, which Butler said was submitted as a foothold to make sure something would happen, reflected the smaller scale event initially envisioned. They estimated a maximum number of participants at 300, including soldiers and civilian personnel. They needed 10 portable restrooms, a stage, and 2 jumbotrons. If it grew, Hardwiger said, but we didn't know that it would. When Trump won the election, though, they had a sense that change was in the air. White House officials say that Trump always wanted a grand celebration for the country's 250th anniversary. The parade is something of a kickoff to a wider series of events next year. The week after he was inaugurated, he signed an executive order creating Task Force 250 to begin the planning. By mid-February, George, the Army Chief of Staff, and his team went to the White House and made a bigger pitch to Trump administration officials. It was time, Army officials suggested, to hold a national-level event of some kind to mark the birthday. Army officials were not initially sure whether Trump and senior White House advisors would be receptive to the idea. When the pitch was greeted with enthusiasm, brainstorming began in earnest, and not Senator Ernst, with suggestions for a parade, fireworks, a performance by Army's Golden Knights parachute team, and other demonstrations. The White House greenlit nearly all of the ideas, and Trump added some of his own. The president has requested aircraft and other military equipment to fully capture the might of our American military, said a White House official speaking on the condition of anonymity to provide detail on the planning. The official said that ever since Trump won in November, the plan was for a military parade to mark the Army's anniversary. Trump doesn't deserve a parade. If you would like to see someone who is deserving of a parade, boy, do I have the video for you. Pepper balls and flashbangs. Walks the fuck away. Flips them off.
He's kicking authority in the balls.
There goes my hero. In a world of dipshits, be a skater kid. That's the moniker he's earned. Don't know if he's a kid or not. I hope I didn't see near enough people talking about him.